I wanted to ask about, the cost cutting and how's it going, because you wanted to take out $2.5 billion this year, and you said last time I heard you said $6 to $7 billion in kind of structural cost disadvantages to your competitors that you needed to work on. How's that going at Ford?
We're making progress. It needs to go faster, but a new culture is setting in the company. We have, a lot of other competitors have made a lot of personnel reductions. We see that as kind of more of in our journey on cost and quality, more of an output metric. So what we want to reduce is more like the bill of material cost, the industrial cost in the plants, a lot of extra inventory we want to get out, as well as our negotiated costs with the suppliers. So our cost we want to get out is actually in the heart of our industrial system. It's not like just people.
You have said in the past you have 25% more engineers working on the same output as your competitors. Does that mean you're going to reduce that 25%? Are you letting it happen through attrition? How's it working?
We're very intentional about this, Matt. I think you're going to see from Ford over many years a natural reduction, not through attrition, but skill mismatch, intentional transition of our teams, moving some of the engineering to lower cost labor sources. So it'll be a combination of things, but it's obvious that we have to be more efficient.
Uncompetitive advertising and marketing spend is also something that you've called out.
Actually, I would say on our Blue business, we've underinvested in advertising. We want on our e-business really not to do a lot of broadcast advertising. We want the product to speak for itself, and really the investment in the marketing there is really the ownership model, so people kind of come back and high loyalty. Same with Pro. On the Blue business, we are starting to see inventories grow for the whole industry. We're in a great space. We have a really fresh lineup of vehicles, but that merchandising capability, I would assume we're going to have to spend more this year, and prices will come down, thankfully for the customer, after all these years of tight supply.
How much do you think prices are going to come down, and what's going to drive that?
We're assuming in our plan this year and next year, 5+% reduction. It's kind of in between where we were maybe in 19 and where we've been. I don't think we're going to go back to the days a couple years ago of 100-day supply. So most people are in the 50-day supply range. I think the natural discounting for someone who has an older product is going to be in the thousands. You're starting to see now low APRs from a lot of brands who have older product. What's unique about Ford is we have an all-new lineup. So, we're a bit of a unicorn, but I think the background pricing will be more difficult.
You've said in the past, or people have asked, how do you get from 8% on your EV business, you want to do 10% overall, to like the 17% that Tesla has? Do you get up there, or do they, you think, eventually see margin pressure?
It's a good question. Both are going to happen. We're seeing, look at what's happening in China with BYD. Look what's happening with Tesla. They've reduced their prices on Model Y, their main product, $5,000, $7,000. It goes up, it goes down, but it's pretty far down. I think they've had the market to themselves. They have a big head start, kind of like what we do on Pro, and now they're seeing a lot more pressure. Obviously, I think we're going to definitely see that, especially in the two-row crossover. We think there'll be like 50 to 100 new models. So and a lot of people want to grow. So it's going to be a great time to buy a two-row electric EV for customers like Mach-E. Where we compete really in EV, pickup trucks, three-row crossovers that we're going to show people today, and the commercial vehicle, EV commercial vehicles, we don't see as much price, competition because there's not as many vehicles choices there. And we've seen that on Lightning. Lightning's price has actually increased over the last 2 years mightily, while the Mustang Mach-E has been more competitive. What we have to do as a company is reduce the bill of material cost. So on Mustang Mach-E, we've gotten the cost of the vehicle down $5,000 through the end this year. We're going to need to do the same thing and even faster on our Gen 2 product.
You mentioned China, and there are reports that you're going to let go, I think, 1,300 workers there, and that you're kind of pulling back a little bit on the China business. Is there any truth to that?
I'm not going to say much about China other than we've already said our business is going to be a lower investment kind of a smaller profile business focused on commercial, where we do really well in some of our passion vehicles. Like Raptor is very super well. I think we'll sell 4,000 Raptors in China this year. So we're going to be a focused business in China. That's what we said, and there's really nothing new about that.
Well, I just was thinking, because you pushed through the cattle battery factory, and it seems that you're not afraid of the political pressure with regards to China. How do you see that in the medium to longer term?
Well, I think, the IRA was a game changer for companies like Ford. Tesla's been importing LFP batteries, CATL, cattle batteries for a long time, and we don't really want to import them. Although we can, because there's no tariff, we'd rather build them, and not just in Mexico, but here in the US, so that cattle company has great LFP technology, and that's a really affordable battery. It also has twice the charge cycles that are great for our commercial customers. It has a little bit lower energy density, and so it's better for like shorter range, like our commercial. And so that's going to be our factory. It's a Ford factory. It's Ford workers. Ford's building the factory. I think it's the right kind of structure of a deal for the IRA to build 4,000 jobs in the U.S. instead of importing. And then, we'll make the batteries, so maybe we can do it ourselves.
So scaling is in batteries, scaling is the biggest problem, right?
It
and
is, yes.
You've made now a new partnership on lithium.
Yes.
That you announced today. That could be difficult in the future. Even copper and aluminum, are going to be in short supply. Look what's happening in Chile at the mines,
yes.
right? How is everyone going to get all the stuff that they need to build the batteries they're expecting? You want to make 2 million electric cars in 2026.
Well, I think what we've learned, hiring a lot of new talent in the company, is that actually the mining part is not the constraint. It's really the processing. So turning those raw materials, especially lithium and nickel, into processed materials we can put as a slurry to make the cells themselves. That processing is the limiting factor. So you can lock up all the mining capacity, which we're pretty much done for 2 million now, EVs. And you're right, the pricing pressure with that, given it's limited, is always going to be there, like we've seen the last year. But I think what people need to understand, it's actually onshoring the processing that's going to be the most important controller of cost and also politics. 80% of the processing for nickel and lithium are being done in China, and we need to localize that in FTA countries or even in North America.
How vertical will you go in terms of, building the batteries, processing the material, mining it?
Well, I think we're going back to kind of where we started as a company, in the 1920s when Henry Ford built the Rouge, and everyone kind of copied the Rouge. We are definitely going much deeper in vertical integration. Batteries, we're going to have our own plant and our own labor here in Michigan for LFP. That'll be a big lesson learned. What we found on batteries is, on the manufacturing side, scaling for quality is a lot harder than we thought. Actually building the buildings, getting the raw material, processing, as I said, is difficult. But the hardest thing we found is to build at scale quality batteries. And that is the hardest thing to scale. And we now have a lot of lessons inside the company. I think vertical integration is going to be the theme of the day, because the gearboxes, the electric motors, the inverters, the whole electrical architecture, we've farmed out to all of our suppliers for decades. We're bringing all that in now, especially the software inside the company. And it's hard, but it helps with the cost. And we think all those are difference makers. So we want to be doing those things and solving the hardest problems at Ford.
With the software and the services, you're making a big bet on that as far as drivers.
Yes.
And boosters to margin as well.
Yes.
How's that going? Do you have to hire a lot more people in order to do that?
Yeah, this is the coolest, probably the biggest thing in our industry. We've been stuck in a valuation box, with low margins, a lot of capital, and susceptible to a lot of economic downturns. what software does and digitization of our product is we can ship software to the vehicle, and those revenues are annuity. So that's a big game changer to us. We're seeing in a Ford Pro, the margins are there, 40+% margin. Customers love it. Think about a plumber's van that could predict failure weeks before it happened. I mean, if you're a plumber and you have 5 vans, and one of them goes down, you lose 20% of revenue. You'll pay a lot of money to predict something, you know, that it's going to fail before it does, so you can go and deal with it at night. And so for us, we're starting to see that software revenue stream on 2 areas. Ford Pro, predictive failure, also telematics. And the second one is semi-autonomous driving. Like, customers want to take their hands off the steering wheel. Eventually they're going to want to take their eyes off the road on a sunny day on the highway. And people are really willing to spend money on that because they want less stressful highway driving. Those are the 2 revenue sources we've never had, Matt.
How many bodies have you added in order to make that a reality? I mean, after the failure of Argo, did you bring in hundreds of people from there?
Yeah, about 600. We have thousands of new people at the company. And the most important work they're doing is actually writing the software to control the vehicle. We're you know, vertically integrating the whole electric architecture of these second cycle of vehicles, so we can send a lot of software to the vehicle and have the vehicle be completely software enabled. And for commercial customers, that's a big deal. So we have thousands of people now. What we've learned about software in the company is kind of really different than we expected. What we've learned is that you need to get the A players, because they attract A players. And software is not like mechanical engineering, where you can kind of hire X amount of people to do X amount of work. Software, the best people actually do it with less people. And unlike our mechanical engineering side, we don't want a lot of supervision on our software side. We want people coding inside the company. It's been 2 years for us on this journey, and we have so much new great talent. Turns out there's a whole group of software engineers that want to work at Ford because they feel like the car is the next, you know, digital product.
So one place I never want to take my hands off the wheel or my eyes off the road is when I'm driving the Raptor R.
Yes, yeah.
It's a beastly experience. You know, I had got my first Raptor from Alan. What's next in terms of the Raptorization of products? You've got a Bronco Raptor. Are we going to see a Mustang Raptor?
Well, that's funny you said that. Actually, something like that is coming later this year, but it'll be executed a little differently on our electric vehicles. I'll leave it at that. You know, what we found, Matt, is Ford is best doing what it's really good at, which is like trucks, SUVs, performance vehicles, these icons that people love around the world, like Levi's 501s, you know, is kind of what we've leaned into the last couple years. Raptor R is a good example. We have a Raptor Bronco now. We have, you know, Tremor Mavericks. We have the Dark Horse Mustang, you know.
You have a Raptor Ranger coming.
Yes, can't wait for that to launch. I think it'll do really well in the U.S. and it's done well globally. So I think we have our swagger back as a company, doing what we really love, these emotional products. More and more of them are becoming hybrid for performance. I think you're going to see that. Now, when it comes to electric, we want to do the same thing. We want to operate in that very emotional territory. We're going to surprise people. The off-road fun will come to life in EVs a little differently than it does in our ICE and hybrid world.
Well, I'm excited to see what you've got.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.